Hey everybody, DM Gallibond here, and tonight on Monster Monday, we're going to be taking a look at Shadrix Silverquill and some homebrew variants that I have created for this monster. So let's talk a little bit about who Shadrix Silverquill is, where Shadrix Silverquill comes from, and the like. Alright, so Shadrix Silverquill was a creature that was introduced to Magic the Gathering in the Strixhaven School of Mages expansion back in 2021. It costs 5 mana to cast and it requires both white and black mana. And it's important to know that Shadrix Silverquill is a legendary creature, so that means that you can only ever have one of those in your deck. Legendary cards you can't have multiples of, like many other cards. So, looking through the official fiction that was released along with the Strixhaven set, Shadrix Silverquill is not mentioned anywhere in that. As a creature card in the game itself, it has both flying and double strike. So that means the creature attacks twice in the attack phase, and it can only be blocked by creatures that are flying or have a special tag that allows them to block flying creatures. Then, as a legendary card, it has several effects on the game. And in a case of Shadrix, you can choose up to 2 out of 3 effects at the start of each combat. And on each player's turn, there is a phase that's the attack phase, which is the beginning of combat. And so I think it's at the beginning of your attack phase that you would choose this if you control Shadrix. So another caveat is that each of your 2 choices must target a different player. So one choice is you can cause a player to create a token that counts as a flying creature. A second option is you can cause a player to draw a card and pay 1 life. And a third option is that you can cause a player to put a +1/+1 counter on every creature that they control. 2 of them have a beneficial effect to put a single flying creature out or to add +1 tokens to every creature that's out. And then the third effect is sort of mixed. You have to pay 1 life, but you are able to draw a card. So you're able to get more resources in your hand. So it's kind of interesting that they do that way. Oh, by the way, I should mention that the artwork on the card here is by Raymond Swanland. And in the D&D campaign, they use detail from the same art. And that is the picture they give us of Shadrix Silverquill. In the campaign, Shadrix is only mentioned as one of the founder dragons. And due to the fact the campaign tops out at level 10, none of those founder dragons are featured in the storyline at all. Now, we don't really get much of a description of Shadrix in the campaign, but from his artwork and from some of his mechanical features, it seems he is a contrasting mix of living shadow and radiant brilliance. And of course, he's a gargantuan dragon, so that makes him pretty impressive. Now, oddly enough, from the artwork, it seems that this dragon may share some genes with Jay Leno's family. All right, so some lore about Shadrix Silverquill is that centuries ago, the dragon Shadrix Silverquill mastered the magic of light and shadow, and he focused that magic through communication. So Shadrix's words thrummed with power, inspiring his allies and demoralizing his enemies. He established Silverquill College on the principles of eloquence and leadership, seeking to produce leaders who would go forth to guide others. And when thinking about the tactics for Shadrix, well, any dragon should try to start combat in the air and use its draconic breath weapon for maximum effect. Then in the first round, Shadrix can use his Flash of Inspiration legendary action to deploy Inkling mascots, and those Inkling mascots give him advantage on attack rolls and on saving throws. So Now, the disadvantage suffered by targets of his claw attacks has no saving throw. Shadrix only needs to hit the target to cause this condition. So use the claw attacks and use the Shadow Slip legendary action as necessary to confer disadvantage on opponents and gain extra movement. And a Shadow Slip is an ability that allows Shadrix to move without provoking attacks of opportunity. Shadrix Silverquill's creature type is a dragon. Now, typically in D&D settings, there are three kinds of dragons. You have the chromatic dragons based on colors, and those are usually evil. You have metallic dragons based on different kinds of metals, and those are typically good. And then you have gemstone dragons, which are based on different kinds of gems, and those are typically neutral on the good and evil axis. But the dragons that come out of Magic the Gathering origins do not always line up with those particular paradigms. So the 5 founder dragons are based on the colors of the Magic the Gathering mana, but in the instance of Strixhaven School of Mages, those 5 dragons are all cooperative and they all work together in order to make Silverquill a better place to sort of better the world, if you will. All right, so Shadrix Silverquill, as written, is a tier 4 foe. He's got a 21 armor class, 363 hit points, and that is derived as 22 d20 plus 132. Has a 40-foot move speed and a fly speed of 80 feet. Now, his challenge rating is 22, and proficiency bonus is plus 7. So ability scores very high. The lowest score is dexterity, which is a 14. Everything else is either 18 or higher. And notice that even though he has a very impressive strength of 25, charisma at 26 is actually the highest score. So the attack bonus is plus 14, damage bonus is plus 7. Breath weapon is recharges on a 5 or 6, requires a DC 21 Constitution save, or it deals 14d8 damage. Now, 7d8 of that is radiant, and 7d8 is psychic. So the target would have to make the save, and then depending on its resistances, it might resist or potentially even be immune to one of those types. Probably very rare that it would be immune to both radiant and psychic damage. And also, if it fails the saving throw, a creature will be blinded until the start of Shadrix's next turn. And if it doesn't use the breath weapon, then it can do a bite, plus 14, reach 15 feet, 1d10 plus 7 piercing, and 1d8 radiant, and 2 claw attacks, so plus 14, reach 10 feet, do 1d6 plus 7 slashing damage each, and the target has disadvantage on its attacks until the target's next turn. So that is where that disadvantage comes from that we talked about. And like I said, only has to hit. There's no saving throw against that disadvantage effect. So doesn't have any particular resistances, but is immune to psychic and radiant damage. And also has legendary resistance 3 times per day. Spellcasting, Shadrix Silverquill follows the new paradigm where they cut down the number of spells that they're able to use. And so he can cast spells using Charisma as the spellcasting ability, and the spell save DC is 23. So once per day, Shadrix can cast Darkness, Daylight, Hypnotic Pattern, Sending, and Suggestions. Now, Shadrix also has legendary actions, and 3 legendary actions, which are at the beginning of each round. They recharge. Can make a claw attack, can do a shadow slip, which costs 2 actions, and it becomes Inky Cloud of Shadow and can move up to half his flying speed, which would be 40 feet, without provoking opportunity attacks, then resumes its true form. During that movement, it moves through creatures and objects as very difficult terrain. If it moves through a creature, it must succeed on a DC 21 Constitution saving throw or become blinded until the end of its next turn. And when you're blinded as a creature, you have disadvantage on your attack rolls, and attack rolls against you have advantage. Shadrix could do that, especially if he's deployed those Inkling mascots and have those nearby a target. So when he goes through, that target gets blinded, and then those mascots can move in and get advantage on their attacks. And if Shadrix ends its move inside an object, he takes 5 force damage and is shunted to the nearest unoccupied space. And the Flash of Inspiration costs 3 actions and magically summons 1d4 Inkling mascots in unoccupied spaces it can see within 60 feet. They obey his commands, take their turns immediately after his, and while any of these Inklings live, Shadrix has advantage on attack rolls and saving throws. Those basically give him extra advantage. So it's really nice at the beginning of the combat, depending on where he lands in initiative, even perhaps before his own turn, he could burn all 3 of his legendary actions to bring in those Inkling mascots and thus give himself advantage on saving throws and attack rolls. So that is Shadrix Silverquill as written as a tier 4 foe. Now, I looked at the ancient dragons in D&D. I noticed that an ancient green dragon is also a CR22. So I kind of said, all right, if we're going to make different versions of Shadrix Silverquill, let's go and take a look at the different life stages of a green dragon, and then we'll sort of swap out some of the features that a green dragon has with some of the features that Shadrix Silverquill has. So that's how I went about looking at the different homebrew variations of Shadrix. Now, with the founder dragons, lore says at the time the plane that contains Strixhaven University first was created, the 5 founder dragons just sort of sprang fully formed into existence in their current form. So they never had a life cycle. But if you want to take these dragons and pull them out of their original setting and put them in other settings and maybe make them archetypes of different dragons that exist in a homebrew campaign, then it's useful to have different life cycles for them, which you could then throw at other parties. So I did that with this, and as previously mentioned, I looked at the green dragons sort of for a comparison of the challenge ratings and everything. So the tier 1 version of Shadrix Silverquill would be the Silverquill Wyrmling. And that creature has an armor class of 17, 38 hit points, 78 plus 7, speed of 30 feet, fly speed of 60 feet, CR2, proficiency bonus plus 2. Stat block is still above average, but it's much more modest than the ancient. And notice that while it has a good strength and a good intelligence and wisdom, charisma is still the highest score for the Silverquill Wyrmling. It gets an attack bonus of plus 4, damage bonus of plus 2. The breath weapon is a DC 11 Constitution save with 3d6 radiant and 3d6 psychic damage. And then it only gets 1 bite for an attack. And then in terms of immunities, it's immune to psychic and radiant damage, and that's because that's what his breath weapon is based on. So then for throwing at a tier 2 party, you would have the young Silverquill. And that bumps up the armor class to 18. Now it has 112 hit points, 14d10 plus 42, has a fly speed or a move speed of 40, fly speed of 80, CR8, proficiency bonus of plus 3. The stat block has bumped up a little bit, and 19 strength, 17 constitution, but of course the charisma is still the highest score at 22. Attack bonus of +7, damage bonus of +4. Breath weapon is now a 14 constitution save, 66 radiant, 66 psychic. And then the attack routine would be either the breath weapon or 1 bite and 2 claws. So +7, reach 10 feet on the bite, 1d10 +4. And the claws reach 5 feet, +7 with 1d6 +7 slashing. And once again, immune to psychic and radiant damage. Tier 3 is the Silverquill Adult. And now we have armor class of 19, 241 hit points, 21 d12 plus 105, speed of 40 feet, fly speed of 80 feet, CR 15, proficiency bonus +5. Again, stat block has bumped up, and as usual, charisma is the highest score there. Attack bonus +11, damage bonus +6. Everything ratchets up a little bit. The breath weapon constitution save DC 18, or it's 68 radiant and 68 psychic damage. And then you would add spell casting, and you would add legendary actions. And the spell casting would be a subset of what the ancient version of Shadrix has. And the legendary actions, well, you might give it only 2 legendary actions and instead of 3. And I would suggest that perhaps the one where it gets to summon in those Inkling mascots would be the one that would not be available to the adult version of Shadrix Silverquill. And that is going to do it for our look at Shadrix Silverquill and the homebrew variations. I've been DM Gallibond. This has been Monster Monday for June 20th, 2022. You can find me usually 3 days a week running my games. I have the Walker of Waterdeep, which is a planeswalking game, Sundays at 2 p.m. Sword Coast Chronicles, which is a slightly modified retelling of the 5th edition Wizards of the Coast campaigns on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. And Saturday Night Greyhawk, which is a 2nd edition retelling of the original Temple of Elemental Evil, Saturday evening at 7:30 p.m. All of those live stream on Twitch. All of the archives of those campaigns, as well as all the other videos that I create, are right here on the YouTube channel. And next week, for Monster Monday, we are going to look at the Strixhaven Campus Guide. If you've been watching this far, thank you so much. Please go ahead and subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video, and click the post notification bell so that you get notified every time new content drops. All right, everybody, that's going to do it. I have been DM Gallibond, reminding you to watch out for the monsters under the bed. Good night, everybody.